I'm expressing my own feelings. But then the job of that record really is to incite in other people's mind, is this about me as well, and does this apply to me? You know, to put that question mark there, that it's not that simple as God or myth will save you. You know, that we have to question ourselves about what our position really is, and don't be too comfortable about just being long-haired. You know? And so, solutions, I don't know. I don't. If you give solutions, I think if anybody has solutions to give, it tends to put people in a position of either having to accept it or reject it, and that splits the people into, you know, Marxist or Trotskyist or, you know, socialist and all that, which is a problem in a way. But of course, according to dialectic materialism and those ideas, that is a natural thing that will always go on, and the thing that all those people, and us and the hippies or whatever it is, are formally against is status quo conservatism, which is unreal. It cannot be. And so our problem is really to solidify, but how do you solidify under a natural dialectic material of splitting and breaking and forming and reforming, counter-revolution? So I don't know how to come to terms with that. I don't know what the answer to that is, because obviously Mao is aware of that and keeps the ball moving, you know. But
you mean in the Cultural Revolution?
Yeah, by continuing, he's obviously going by the letter and keeping the. Oh, because like Russia, you were saying, you know, what happened to Russia? It's obvious that it will happen anywhere, you know. Even in Cuba, it'll probably happen. And anyway, once the new power's taken over, they have to try it in a way to establish status quo, just to keep the trains running or to keep people running the factories and that. And then you're in that position.
But to keep the trains running, do you have to have, you know, repressive apparatus like Stalin? Perhaps they'd run just as well with workers' democracy. I mean,
yeah, I think that, but I still think that we're all capable. We all have bourgeois in us, and we all get tired now and then, and we all, maybe especially after a revolution, would tend to, you know, relax a little. And the amount of fervent revolutionaries after the revolution probably died off a little, you know.
In Russia they did, but they died literally.
Yeah, but how do you keep people in an activist role once they've achieved what seems to be the aim, which is to take over? How do we or any of us prevent people and ourselves from becoming apathetic again, or relaxing it, without having somebody like Mao, which is something different, which continually doesn't allow that to happen? You know, what happens when Mao goes?
I mean, having Mao there is an accidental and partial solution. I mean, it'd be better to have something built in. To the revolutionary
Well,
state.
I think he's trying to build in Maoism, but it's almost the same as building in Confucianism, or in a way it's
got to be built in via the participation of the masses.
That's the crucial thing.
If Mao personally has to keep doing that, that means when he dies, unless he's really
that's the
infiltrated all their minds completely, they will go the same way as any other people, because people are people, and obviously if all the communists always said you have to keep the revolution going continually or keep purging, then that's the difficulty, you know. I mean, if we took over in Britain, then we'd have the job of cleaning up the bourgeois, and we'd have the job of keeping people in a revolutionary state of mind, you know.
Yeah, but in Britain, with one difference between Britain now and revolutionary Russia, is that despite the fact that it is bourgeois education, the cultural and educational level of a large majority of the British people today as a whole is much, much higher than it was in a sense.
Yeah, but
they were literally peasants in Russia, sunken in China. Ignorance and backwardness and rural.
But what I don't really think, even though relatively it's the same, apart from some kind of knowledge of what happened in 1812 or Columbus went to America, your relative human feelings are the same, and it's about eating and sleeping and fucking and do I have a roof over my head and opportunism.
But you see, I think...
Well, what would you say to what would be the solution to that?
Well, one difference, John.
Young generation take over.
Yeah, but they're no different from anybody else.
No, but
I mean,
John,
they're all...
It doesn't... I mean, people are what they are because of the institutions that have formed them. I mean, institutions like the family, informal ones,
Yeah.
as much as, you know, parties or anything. And the basic thing that happened in Russia is the old order collapsed under the strain of the First World War. And the revolutionaries were a tiny group. There were 30,000 people in a country of nearly 200 million.
Yeah.
Now, you say take over. What would happen in this country was the masses would have, the great majority of the working people of this
Yeah.
country would have to take over.
Yeah.
Now, if you've got a great mass movement like that,
Yeah.
and we'd have to have, because this social order is not going to crumble. It's you know, they're
It's
not
going to be
going
a
to
hard,
suddenly...
long fight.
Yeah.
And that seems to me that it's in the struggle you develop the institutions which can check arbitrariness, that can check opportunism.
Yeah.
And that's why in China, where they had 20 years of struggle, they've been able to check opportunism and arbitrariness much more than in Russia, where there was just a few months.
But it was instigated by Mao himself, wasn't it? It wasn't like a national feeling of, well, there's too many opportunists and too much apathetic.
No, but
Hello? Who is it? Laundry, okay, stick it here.
But I mean,
Hello.
no, I mean the point you raise is not one of Mao on his own. It's basically one of revolutionary leadership,
Yeah.
of a revolutionary organization which has a leadership, which is precisely capable of taking the masses forward when they reach a certain level of
I mean, he
consciousness.
had to have some followers, otherwise he wouldn't have been
Sure,
able to
sure.
achieve anything. You
The
know. He's
thing-
just one man. I mean, if all the youth of China hadn't been behind him, then
Yeah.
the Cultural Revolution would have been impossible. And actually, let's face it, the Cultural Revolution didn't succeed completely. You know, I mean,
Did it not?
No.
The thing is, I think they wouldn't have to be too... Well, I mean, obviously they are fairly well behind him because they've all got the book and shouting and that. But in a society like that, or here, to allow the youth to freely, you know, ostracize the local mayor and whatever it is, you know, it wouldn't take much to get them, you know, you can bust your teachers now, you know, and you can break the university up. You know, there wouldn't have to be that sort of, well, I can't think of the word, like patriotic or whatever it is, to, you know, if the youth in Britain was suddenly given a free rein to destroy the local councils and the local schools and that. It wouldn't take too much if they were given the head by the government. But I wonder
and the
about
kids know, don't they?
the
what-
charges against Mao of sort of personality cult, that cult, personality cult. It doesn't seem to be part of the basic communist
It isn't.
idea.
It's a
I'm
very
like
mixed
Khrushchev
situation.
in his book that remembers a bit. So I know he's a bit of a lad and all that. It sort of puts him down for that, saying it's like Stalinism. So what I'd like to know your opinion on that. You know.
Well, I mean, two things. In the first place, I mean, I think that a personality cult, like
Yeah.
the one which has been built up in
Yeah.
China, is alien to Marxism.
Yeah.
You know, because Marxism is basically about ideas.
Yeah.
It is also about, of course, about people, but Marx and Lenin and Trotsky and many of the revolutionaries, and even in the beginning of China, Mao himself,
Yeah.
were totally opposed to the personality cult, which is why it's written
Yeah.
into the Chinese constitution.
So how do they account for it?
I think it's the fact that one section of the Chinese leadership found in Mao's cult the best guarantee of ousting a right-wing section of the Chinese leadership, a revisionist Chinese leadership, and this has literally got out of control from them, and they've, you know, find it a bit difficult to withdraw, and I think it's myself.
It's a
It's
sign
re-
of the weakness of the movement there, that
Yeah.
Mao needed to use this cult of his own personality.
It seems like people need a father figure, you know, someone to lead them. There never seems to be a
But you
position
see,
of-
John,
Well,
what
funnily enough,
equality.
well, it's true that even in Russia there was no cult. I mean, Lenin hated anybody praising him in public. You know, he'd
Yeah,
write
but he liked
letters
liked
saying
him to
lay
do
off
it
it.
round the back, didn't he, according to Khrushchev?
No.
He was.
Well, he didn't like him to say it in public, but he liked him to sort of acknowledge what he did. You know, he wanted to...
Lenin or Stalin or something.
Stalin.
Oh, no, no,
Stalin.
Oh, you were talking about Lenin. Sorry,
Yeah,
sorry.
Lenin, Stalin
Yeah.
was of
Oh,
course.
Lenin
Stalin
was
laughed it
different,
up,
yeah.
you know. No, Lenin hated
Lenin
it. He
was
really was a very modest man. But on the other hand, it's true that people seem to need But it's partly when they haven't created an institution of their own, they need a substitute. And partly because the revolutionary institutions were weak in Russia, the Soviets,
Yeah.
they needed the little father, Lenin,
Yeah, but I think we all do.
That's the problem.
But
But to the extent we control our own lives, we don't.
yeah, but to create a more illusionary, but that gets like religion, father figure of the state or the image of the workers is superior to individualism.
You see, I mean, I think that
You know, you could with Western style communism in power, it would be possible to create, well, you know, a sort of almost imaginary workers' image of themselves as the father figure, you know.
I mean, what the workers have got, you know.
Only if they were actually, you see, so long as their life in the factory is being run by somebody else,
Yeah.
by a capitalist or even a bureaucrat,
Yeah.
they'll need a father figure. But if they're running their own life, which is most of the time in the factory, I think you're right. They'd still need some ideals, but I don't think it would take the form of a personality. It's nearly the same.
But it all, I mean, it's happened in China and Russia and Cuba.
Yeah.
I mean, Fidel and Che and all that. I mean, it seems that we all have this basic need for it, you know.
So people have to have more trust in themselves, you know.
That's
That's
the question, I mean, because you see, what one's got to very consciously do is instill into the working class movement a feeling of self-confidence in themselves. And you can't only instill that by propaganda.
No.
It's when the workers begin to move themselves. They occupy a factory. When the capitalists make them redundant, they say, okay, you can bugger off. We'll run this factory ourselves. And when they actually start running the factory themselves, as happened in France in May '68, then they begin to feel a sense of their own strength and importance.
That means that you have to give people some responsible position, you know, and all the governments are afraid of that, even Mao or Stalin anyway. They, you know, they like to make a revolution, but then after that, you see, they get afraid of the people and they try to limit their abilities, you know.
That's true, you see.
I lived in Cuba for a bit, and I got the impression that they got the Americans just 90 miles away. They think it's too big a risk to let, and you know, they're partly wrong and partly right. Too big a risk and they let the people have a certain amount of responsibility, but until you let them have a complete responsibility, it's not really a revolution, is it?
Yeah.
You don't trust people. And
that's right. It shows on the part of the leadership, in fact, a lack of self-confidence, that you can't trust the people. And I think, you see, the big difference between Mao and Stalin is this, that Stalin was a counter-revolutionary. He strangled the Russian Revolution, literally strangled it, killed all the old Bolsheviks. Mao made a revolution. That's the big difference between them. And then Mao did what Stalin in his wildest nightmares used to dread. Mao actually mobilized the people themselves. And when he mobilized them, the young Chinese students and workers were out onto the streets, then in many places like Shanghai and Canton, there were many groups of workers and students who said, well, we hate Liu Shaoqi, but we also think that Mao has made certain mistakes like this, like this, like this. And it created a fantastic regeneration of things. And this is, in a sense, why some of the people around Mao got scared, because they said if the development
will fall.
It's a possibility, yes. But
there's a fantastic development of those Dartsi Bao, you know, the wall posters. Everybody wrote their own poster in big character poster elites, I think, and stuck it up like very political haikus, you know, very subversive ones. And
but still, you need Mao's photographs all over, don't you? I mean, it's like as if they're forcing Mao to take a position of a dictatorship.
Yeah, you see, I mean, I must confess, I was in Peking last summer going on my way to North Korea, and it was a bit religious, this whole business of seeing small kids passing by, and actually with a teacher who then instructed them to bow before Mao. I don't think, you know, I mean, I disagree.
Because there's bound to be a reaction against that.
But also the kids won't take it seriously. It's like, you know, learning what they learn at school. It just becomes a part of a sort of convention which they get over. But I think...
And even the counter-revolutionaries, revisionists, or whatever you want to call them in China, used Mao. Everybody was using Mao, so it becomes senseless.
Meaningless. It just doesn't...
Could I ask you something which sort of is related to this? sort of concerns your position, partly as an artist, and that is, I mean, there has been this fantastic colonial revolution where the peasants of the third world have started throwing off the domination of our countries. And look, they haven't created a perfect socialism, and they couldn't because they didn't have the resources, but they've done pretty well to defeat, like the largest imperialist powers in the world, like in Vietnam. Now, when we're talking about relating to that, I mean, your music to begin with, it's very interesting. I saw that, to begin with, they thought that was imperialist music.
Yeah.
Because it came out of Voice of America. They heard Voice of America.
Yeah, also there was, the Russians had put it out too, that we were capitalist robots, which we were, I suppose.
But they were pretty stupid too, not to see that there was something...
They're scared of the Western culture, because, I mean, just recently I read something where some Vietnamese up north had a secret club where they all dreamt about what they would do if they were capitalists with all the women, and they were playing rock and roll, and the actual musicians were playing it, not playing records, and they were imprisoned for 20 years because of it. I think they're so scared of Coca-Cola and rock and roll.
You're right, you see, because I'll tell you...
But I think that's silly.
But they've got to see the difference, haven't they? I mean, in Cuba, it was a really big breakthrough in 1967.
Yeah.
It was actually when Sgt. Pepper came out. They listened to it, and suddenly somebody clicked, said, this is not...
bourgeois.
It's not Coca-Cola, And they started playing it on the radio and everything.
Amazing.
And I think that, of course, the Vietnamese also really understand that, but then you get these ridiculous incidents like this one you mentioned, which is very bad.
But it's the same kind of paranoia that the West has about anything communist. You see.
But I think that your own development is probably going to help this too, because, I mean, as you say, I think they were mainly wrong, but they were also partly right to see that the Fab Four were some part of the system.
Yeah.
As you become less part of the system, then I think they can understand that of course, there's the cultural barrier is also very big, because it just our music doesn't
But there is the problem, as I've become more radical, like with Two Virgins or whatever, actually putting heavy statements out, that the influence grows less, it grows more strong and solid, but it diminishes. The Beatle influence is far superior to any individuals, any of us individually working. And, that is part of my policy, really, is to shake off teeny boppers, so it won't frighten off the other type of people, try and get through to them. So the power diminishes then.
But as you say, it's also concentrated more in a way.
Yeah.
Sorry, you go.
No, what I was saying is, let's face it, Beatles music was a 20th century folk song within the frame of capitalism. They couldn't do it otherwise. And the fact that they made their names big was they had to play the game within the, capitalism society, like Smiling and all that, And if the whole society changed, then, the song would change too.
Well, we did turn out to be a Trojan horse in a way.
In one sense.
We were moved right into the centre, and then we said, fuck drugs, and the rest of it. And that's when they started dropping us.
I think you were only a Trojan horse because you were that right from the beginning, actually, that there was always that contradiction in it.
Yes.
No, he was always like that.
It did come out of the Liverpool sort of slums in a way, didn't it?
Yeah, well, the first thing we had to do was proclaim our Liverpoolness to the world and say it's all right to come from Liverpool and talk like this, because anybody Liverpool that had made it, like the comedians, Ted Ray or Tommy Hanlock, they all, and Arthur Askey, he actually said, I mean, these are only comedians, but that's what came out of Liverpool before us, was that they all had to lose their accent to get on the BBC. So in that way, we stopped the accent game, and all the middle classes were trying to talk Liverpool. That's a fact.
Did any of them...
Like Mike Darbo was on the other night saying that he always felt embarrassed about his middle classness and his voice, and for a period he would say, how are you, all right, and all that, that all those people would do that, and that the people at Harrow and Eton now or growing long hair and trying to lose their accents, you know, which is a good change.
Did anybody ever try to get you to stop using Liverpool accent or?
No.
No, they wouldn't.
We always put it on more. Yeah.
So the Trojan horse method seems to be very successful.
Yeah, but we weren't so much aware of it. I mean.
No, but I mean, for the future thing, you know. I mean, like Ruben, I like what he did on TV and everything. But he tried to sort of let David Frost, you know, smoke marijuana or something. That was very good, you know, but it won't work, you know. But if you just gave, you know, like a cigarette, you know, marijuana in this, you know, you want this, you know, and he'll just smoke it. And he said, well, you know, isn't this...
But Rubin's position is that there's no time for subtlety anymore.
It's an absurd position, actually, because...
I think it helps, you know.
In one
It
sense.
shakes things up, you see, Tariq. That's the point.
I mean, because
this
they're very...
country needs shaking
they're
up
really...
like a desert needs water. I mean, you've got to get people
It was the best
realising
thing that happened on TV. You know.
No,
Right.
that's
Since we took Michael X on Simon Dees, I think.
Well, that's it. You see,
Sneaked him in.
Tariq and I have talked on the box many a time about revolution, but somehow we're all part of a discussion.
Yeah.
Or being interviewed,
Yeah.
and it's not breaking the framework. And so even though I don't think, you know, it could have been better done and all that, at least breaking the framework once was a good thing to do.
I thought it was good to sort of incite people to do similar things, you know, be disobedient in school or whatever it is, and stick your tongue out, whatever, you know, just keep insulting them.
The schools is where it could start happening, actually.
Yeah, well, that's where Red Mole should get at, the schools.
We are getting a lot there, actually.
Especially the students.
Yeah. No, lots of school students are now reading them out.
That's good.
Do you get a sort of different pattern of correspondence? I suppose you must do now. I mean, letters that you get.
It has changed over time, hasn't it?
Very different.
There's a few more intelligent letters than, you know, to give my love to Paul and all that, which used to be.
Very political these days, isn't it? Most of them.
Yeah, it's usually, you know, will you sort of help this way or write a letter this way, and etc., etc. So it's becoming more realistic, the mail.
Why? I mean, John, I mean, what sort of were the basic reasons? I mean, I'm not talking about commercial affairs.
Yeah.
Why you split up with the other?
With the others?
Yeah.
Well, because Paul is a conservative.
He votes Tory, does he?
Well, I don't think any of us have ever voted.
Yeah.
We haven't
He
actually.
is.
But he is a conservative,
Yeah.
and always was in a way. And he's more interested in putting out sort of pop music than anything that says anything. You know? And it was just that kind of thing, you know, that at one period I just said to them, well, I think it's limiting what we're doing together, you know, and I want to work individually and not with the group anymore. I think the group image inhibits me. And it was just like that, you know. It was just a case of we got to a point where we just couldn't work musically together because I couldn't be bothered with, you know, sort of jog along happy songs, you know, about nothing in particular. I just could no longer feel it, you know.
Well, funnily enough, some of the new record is seems almost to be taking a new look at a lot of things that were there in some of the Beatles stuff in a different way. I was just thinking, for example, a lot of the old songs used to be about childhood.
Yeah.
And now
yeah.
you're talking about your real childhood.
Yeah, I was always inclined to write about childhood. Most of the childhood stuff would be from me.
Yeah.
And
I mean, it was good stuff, but also it had a missing element. I
well, the
think,
missing
which is-
element was reality, you know, the fact that I wasn't wanted and that my worst fears had come true, in a way. The fear that fear of not being wanted, you know. And when that finally hit home, well, it cleared the air.
Maybe that's why you had to sing about childhood in the previous time.
Yeah, because I couldn't face up to probably what was happening to me actually now. So I'd sing about childhood in a way. But I just always found that when I was writing, I would always drift back into childhood. It would come out whether I liked it or not. Because, I mean, it's just a fact that that's what makes you what you are, childhood. No? There's no getting away from it.
Could I ask about a contradiction there that comes out of the new record in a way, which is, I mean, the bad things seem to come out of childhood, the family.
Yeah.
But the good things also seem to come out of personal relationships and...
What with your opinion?
Well, quite. And which is really a new family or going to be, you know.
Yeah, I'm not against family as such, you know.
Depends on how aware you are.
Yeah, if you're aware of what's happening, well, you know, you can manage. But I suppose, well, you could call communists a family too, but we just happen to be a family of two.
Yeah.
And we found ourselves in the same position, you know, with her coming from middle-class Japan and me coming from working-class Liverpool. We found out we had the same experiences, really.
That is amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because the cultural and national...
That means that the world is getting smaller and smaller, you know.
Yeah.
And we just have to face that. For instance, you know, when John was saying, well, he felt that he was, you know, singing American songs or something like that. But I really think that, I mean, there's Coca-Cola in Britain too and everything, and we sort of share more, you know, strange sort of same culture in a way, you know. Wherever you go, you have Hilton and, you know.
But did you get a lot of sort of, I mean, after you started living, you and Yoko started living together, did you get lots of sort of letters from racists and people like
Oh, yeah,
that?
yeah.
You did?
I was going to publish them all the time, but it never happened. I got them all together. So, you know, all things like what the Japs did to us in the war, a lot of...
And she'll slit your throat, you know,
I did this
in the middle of the night.
sort of declaration of our living together in a show at Robert Fraser's, which is You Are Here, which is just people walked in when they got downstairs, it just said You Are Here.
That
And
was
they
a
got
reality thing.
That was pretty real. I mean, flashes of reality were always there. And then I let balloons go, and with right back to this address. And of course, it was all in the press, and a lot of letters came by the press. And there was a lot of racialism. You know, I was really shocked. You know, because I hadn't thought about it. You know, it just hadn't entered my mind really. And that might be sensible.
No, 7:15.
And it was a real shock. You know, there was a lot of just all from army people, you know, people in Aldershot and things like that, and these crazy old women and that, saying Jap bastards, and they slit our throats, and what, she doesn't murder you at night. You know, I was really, really shocked by it.
Yes,
Well, that brought us closer together, of course, you know.
about the age and the race difference.
Yeah, I mean, the subtle difference between racism and anti-femalism is just as subtle. You have to really sort of have it, a light shone on it to realise that...
I mean, there's a lot of male chauvinism.
Oh, sure. That's what I was going to ask you too. How do you treat your women? You know? I mean, because we can't really have a revolution until we include women in it.
Absolutely.
They have to be. And it's so subtle, the way you're taught, is that it took me quite a time to realise my maleness sort of cutting off certain areas for her. And she's a red-hot liberationist in a way. And she was quick to show me where I was going on. It was just a built-in sort of reaction. And anybody that claims radicalism or, you know, whatever it is, I always just like to see how they treat the women, you know, and then...
Often pretty badly, actually.
Sure.
There's a lot of male chauvinism on the left, you know.
Yeah. I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, you can't talk about equal rights and revolution and power to the people. The people include both sexes.
Yeah.
You see, from a woman's point of view, I mean, you can't love somebody unless you're in an equal position at least, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, if you're suppressed and all that, everything that you do is out of fear, you know, or insecurity. And that's not love or anything. And that's why basically I think women hate men, you know.
And vice versa.
Or whatever, you know. And so if you have slaves around in your house, how could you make a revolution, you know, try to...
Absolutely. Actually, it is a problem which increasingly, I mean, a lot of it exists, but increasingly revolutionary men who are socialists, regard themselves as Marxists, are coming to terms with now, or are having to come to terms with, because the women they live with, most of them happen to be political. You know, I mean, it's and
or
it
even
happens,
not necessarily political, but very
they
keen on
understand.
women's liberation.
Well, that's political, all right.
My girlfriend's in court today, actually, on the Miss World demonstration.
Oh, great.
I was a bit guilty coming here instead. Still.
But
well, she's got her independence now.
Well, quite. I mean, you know, she can handle that all right. But when did you come to start thinking like that?
Well, Yoko was a liberation before I met her. You know, I mean, she'd had to fight through a man's world. That the art crowd is just completely dominated by men, and they're very bitchy, and she'd fought her way through that. So she was full of revolutionary zeal when we met. There was no ever any question about it that we have to have a 50-50 relationship, or there was no relationship, and I was quick to learn. As simple as that. She did a good article in Nova about 2 years back. So she said, "Woman is the nigger of the world," really.
That's absolutely correct.
And that was a couple of years back. So, and she was a friend of Kate Millett at one time.
Yes, Kate is a very nice girl, but she's suffering too from that, you know, because if we try to, you know, sort of be natural, then we naturally become lonely, because there's so many women willing to be a slave and everything, and usually men prefer that, you know. So you have to always take a chance of, am I going to lose my man, or, you know, whatever. Yeah, it's very sad.
Afternoon.
Kate is having, you know, sort of...
Now, we've been in the last few issues of the Mo, we've been doing a lot of interviews with these women night cleaners who go around cleaning offices.
Oh, yeah.
And how they're trying to unionize themselves, and it's an amazing story. In the latest issue, you got a story of how one of these bosses on these buildings, you know, people who pay out the money, rang up May Hobbs, who's the leader of these women, and said that if she came around to his building and tried to unionize the women working there, he'd come and break her arm.
Amazing. Yeah. They're insane, aren't they?
Yes, that's very... So we're very lucky, actually. But we have our loneliness too, don't we? I mean, together.
Yeah, the more reality you come to face, the more alone you are, because you realise how much unreality is the main program of the day. Yeah. And the more real we become, the more abuse we take.
Yeah.
So it does radicalise us in a way, you know, by being put in a corner.
But in a way, it can only be really, I mean, it's only by linking up with other people against the program of the day that one can really, I mean, one just feels better, I find.
Yes.
I mean, one can do it, even one would have to do it by oneself, but if one can do it with another person, that's great, and then more people, that's even better.
Yeah. That's true.
That's why communication is so important. I really think that, you know, books and papers, you know, still have fantastic power, you know.
Yeah.
Because there are many people who just read one book and got some kind of enlightening feeling, you know, about it, understood a whole lot, and they changed their whole life, you know.
You think it's, I mean, books and paper rather than
gone.
Yeah.
You know, because we always think, well, we just have to go to war, you know, we just have to do it.
No, but
it's very stupid to start thinking about that, and that's what the weathermen are doing, until you've
actually built up some
But
roots.
revolutionists think that, you know, like we're soft to think that there's a peaceful way, but communications are fantastic.
No, but the crucial thing, surely, Yoko, is that suppose you have established roots in the masses through your propaganda, through your actions. Ultimately, when you challenge the bourgeois system and the capitalists come and try to crush you with force, then there are two options. Either you lie down and are crushed, or you fight
but
back.
Before that, can
before
we somehow
that,
do it,
course.
you know? And it is before. I mean, I know that
we
they
haven't
try to
reached that.
crush
That's why the weathermen are up the wall, and they don't understand that it's... I think they're just beginning to, actually. That one can't sort of go out on the streets
with a gun in hand and think that by even killing 2 policemen, you'll suddenly radicalize the American working class.
We go the other way.
Yeah, exactly. At the moment, it will.
What about Ireland then?
Ireland is fascinating, absolutely fascinating situation, because what's been happening in Ireland is that the mistake or the interests of British imperialism in the 20s and 30s, that all those chickens are now coming home to roost. They thought they could have a partition, divide a country up on the basis of religion, on the basis of Protestants they'd actually planted there a long time ago, and that this situation would continue to exist. And what's happening now is that all these accumulated contradictions are blowing up in their face. And no one would have dreamt 10 years ago that the British would have to send the army back into Ireland again to keep the population under control. That women and kids would be put up against the wall and searched. That's what's happening in Belfast, in London, and Derry.
That was a good thing Rubin did, was shout about Ireland all over the TV.
Oh, yeah.
Really hit it home.
I mean, Marx actually once said something very, very crucial. In 1870, 100 years ago now, he said that unless the British working class and the British revolutionary movement understands and supports the struggle of the Irish to free themselves, they'll never be able to free themselves. It's absolutely...
People that oppresses another
can never be free.
Yeah, sure. Well, the Southern Irish aren't exactly...
No, the government isn't. I mean, it's...
Well, the Southern Ireland is as much a creation of that phony setup as the North, really. And the real revolutions in Ireland are just as much against the regime in the South as in the North. But I think the North is going to be the weak link of the thing, you know. Of course, there's big problems in the North too, because the working class is divided according to religion. And so the Protestant workers are still... I mean,
even with the fact that they don't get a real vote or an equal vote or anything,
they get unemployment, the worst housing conditions you've ever seen. You know.
They're the poor whites of Great Britain in that sense, you know. Like the poor whites were always, in one sense, much fiercer in their anti-black hatred than as some of the whites elsewhere, the poor whites in the South, because the only privilege they had was the color of their skin. Otherwise, they were as bad off as the blacks in some cases. That's the Protestants in.
I get very excited when you talk about there's no choice but to use violence, because in American TV I saw this program, and a kid who just came back from Vietnam or something, he's lying down in bed, and the only body he has is just up from here, and it's completely cut. This is all nothing. It's just like a lump of meat, And he's just overdosed it out, and he's saying, "Well, I think it was a good experience." I mean,
because he doesn't want to face him.
It's very simple. I suppose, but after
he doesn't want to think, well, it was all a waste of time, and I've just got no legs. That's the problem.
But you see, the thing is, it's such a painful thing, and when you think of violence, you just think of it conceptually, but what actually means that maybe your kid would, or yourself would not have a hand.
But Yoko, think of this. I mean, say in Northern Ireland, in those Catholic districts like Broadside and Falls Road, I mean, the police were coming in there with these specials and just shooting up the place. They killed 7 people on one evening in '69 in August when I was there. And what they were doing was really defending themselves. I mean, Bernadette Devlin, at that time they were building the barricades there. Weren't symbolic at all. Those barricades were to stop the armoured cars coming in. To stop. And it's, I think that is, it's when you get defensive popular violence that is 100% justified.
Yeah, I do.
But if you go out with a gun and think you can individually pick off,
No, that's why
that's
we have to do it before that happens, I mean, I know that it sounds...
What do we do?
Well, that's why I'm saying,
That's the problem, because no social class, no ruling class in the whole of history has ever given up power voluntarily.
I know. But you see, the thing is, I think tradition is created every day, and there was no tradition or precedent of that. But I mean, was there any precedent of an age where communication is so, rapid and all that? No, still no. And the thing is, for instance, when you're publishing Red Mole and that, I think, leaders tend to be intellectual, and they mainly appeal to sort of intellectualism and all that of students, meaning college students, of course, mainly. But I mean, if you start to do something which sounds useless, useless because we're impatient about it. But if you start to have a column for younger kids, you know, who are not intellectualized yet, and appeal to their instincts, you know, and to, you know, educate them in a communist way, you know, I mean, with comics and that, or even, you know.
Yeah.
The movement in the States is doing some of that.
You know,
They
or sort of lyrics and that, you know. And I think in that sense what Beatles did was fantastic, you know. They didn't use guns to do it, you know.
Yeah, but as I said, nothing happened.
Right, but I mean, there was a change, definite change. I'm not saying that it was for the better or anything, I'm just saying that sometimes you can make a revolutionary change without using...
But you can't take power.
That's the crucial thing.
Because when it comes down to the nitty-gritty, they won't let you have anything.
Yeah.
They'll give you all the right to perform and dance.
You know, that's the right way. For instance, the thing is, even after revolution, if people don't have any trust in themselves, then they're going to be slaves for the communist or, you know, government or something. So it's really very important to sort of, it's a long way around, but to build people's confidence, you know, that you don't need a father figure, and actually you are it, and all that, you know.
To do that, you need a focus for people to, well, at least 10 years. You need a focus for people to organise around, and sometimes the trade union does that. It's something they can defend themselves with. Sometimes a factory committee is something they can use. Or
it's a pity that like a trade union couldn't open up its own factories or something, you know.
Well, it's partly, I mean, take this Rolls-Royce. Why don't they, you know, the bit feathers and that, they have no idea of how, they haven't said workers could take over this factory and run it instead of closing it down, which they could. But in a way, I understand that, I mean, the snag of that would be that if you ran it in the capitalist system, you'd have to make a profit. You'd have to...
But they could put the profit back into the factory, couldn't they?
Yeah, but part of the way the system rules us is not just the profits. It's the having to produce a commodity on a market. It's, I mean, the co-ops, for example, are a good illustration of even you've got a sort of workers' control in the co-ops, you know, and they plough the profits back in. But either they're very inefficient in capitalist terms, or if they're efficient, they're just like a capitalist firm, really, in a different way. I mean, as I say, Rolls-Royce, actually some of the workers did own it after the factory because they did own their own things. I mean, in a way, you've got to change the system so that men control the economy and not the market. Because at the moment, the market says who is unemployed and who isn't. It's not any individual. Even the capitalists don't decide. I mean, the Indian peasants starve and that we eat the fat of the land. It's not Nixon to decide that. It's the market. How are we going to stop exploiting the third world? Only by destroying the market, the international market, whereby we get the coffee and all the things that we... You know, this probably comes from Philippines or somewhere.
This is, well, Nixon does have a lot of control of the market too. You know, the thing is, and I know it sounds sort of very optimistic and all that, but you see, just like some fashion catches up, you know, if you make a fashion out of it, you know, sometimes some kind of habit or idea, you know, sort of spreads rapidly.
But look, Yoko, look at the biggest fashion that has spread. The long hair, hippie fashion are dropping out. Well, most of the people, in fact, large numbers of them who could afford to drop out were middle-class kids. And the only reason they could afford to drop out was because they could afford to drop in again. And they didn't change. Many people, I mean, some of the hippies, quite honestly, I know, who used to come with us on demonstrations to Grosvenor Square against the Americans in Vietnam and used to be beaten up with us by the fuzz. I actually saw one of these people the other day in a big car going past a demonstration, you know, and it was funnily enough a demonstration on Ireland, and in fact honking the horn of his car and hurling abuse at the demonstrators as he drove on. And that's just one incident, but it does typify.
How typical is it? I think hippies, when they're I mean, some of them have very sort of reactionary ideologies, but they're not positively reactionary, and quite a lot of them become, you know, quite radical, really. And I don't think that they're pure revolutionaries, but who of us is, you know? I mean, the general cultural impact increased the size of the movement. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
No, that's true.
It didn't change the structure. It widened, the way this communication you talk about helps you build your movement. But in the end, the aim is not just to have a big movement, it's actually to change society. And to do that, that's when sorts of, I mean, the form that force will take is difficult to say. I mean, in France in 1968, there were 10 million workers on strike. I mean, there really was a big movement there, occupying the factories. Force didn't, I mean, it wasn't machine guns in the streets, it was actually barricades and with the police going out with gas and the students fighting back with rocks. And if they had these massive demonstrations of 500,000 workers in the centre of Paris. Now, if they'd occupied the government buildings, which they could have done then, what would they have done? Sent the army in to shoot down workers? They might have done, in which case you'd have to defend yourself. Probably the soldiers wouldn't have fired on them.
Yeah, the communists fucked that up, didn't they? The Communist Party.
Absolutely. Because they didn't want a revolution because they're scared. And they thought they can get it by a deal at the top because they don't like the masses taking an initiative, you know.
But you know,
madness, isn't
to talk about an extreme case, you know, Nixon can't be president if 90% of the people in United States would have a different idea about it. Then he would start to, you know, sort of sing a different tune.
Yeah.
There are opportunities.
Yeah, but he has the money to communicate, you see, opposition doesn't.
Yes, but he relies on bankers, and if the bankers started to change...
But why should the bankers change?
If it changes, the bankers no longer exist.
Yes,
someone else will take their place. That's why you see, if you know, like some comrades say, let's go and shoot off a few dozen capitalists. So you can do that. You can shoot off.
It just goes to their wives.
It just goes to their wives or their sons, or otherwise the government buys it and sells it to someone else. It doesn't change anything at all. That's why even our propaganda,
it hasn't had a chance to live out yet. You know, I mean, will it withstand all the pressure and all that?
no, I mean,
But so there's all those questions. But it doesn't mean to say that Marxism or whatever it is. It's like blaming the failure of Christianity on Christ. It wasn't Christ's fault. It was the others. You know. I mean, he was a basic Marxist with a halo on his head.
now there's what we'll next time when we bring this interview around, there's a very interesting text which I think you should read, in fact, on the Russian Revolution by Trotsky, called The Revolution Betrayed, in which he analyzes very concretely what went wrong.
Yeah, I get very muddled up about the Trotskyists and thissists and thatists, what their position is. So yes, that's fine.
This to be circulated.
Okay.
Okay, this is ours.
That's great.
That was last Christmas.
I mean, you can just cut that Merry Christmas off something if you want.
Could I ask you, that war is over thing, did it link up? You know, in Jerry Rubin's book, he talks about a demonstration in New York called The War is Over. Was that linked up to that?
Not as far as we know.
This is the first time I've heard about that.
What we did was buy space in all the major cities in the West and just put up billboards and saying
I think they must have done it at the same time.
Maybe they saw the posters.
It's very curious because Rubin says, you know, there was this war. He doesn't tell you how it arrived, who had the idea, where they got it from. And they had a demonstration in Central Park, and they rushed around, about 2,000 of them, ran around, you know, 44th Street and so on, saying, the war is over. About a year ago.
Yeah, the original idea was to try and make fake paper headlines, you know.
Yes.
Like Daily Mirror saying the war is over. And then, you know, they do Prince Philip is guilty of, not really, they always have small type.
He says it was the fantastic, Rubin said, the reaction, because he said the first thing is nobody asked who won. Nobody, even the people who were pro-war, felt they could say that they were sorry about the war being over, and so on. You know, he gives a good description.
In New York, the poster was on a giant billboard right next to the induction office for the army. It's a great move.
I mean, what factors would you say had, in fact, radicalized you over the last few years?
Well, I'd always been interested, as I said in the Rolling Stone article, in China and Russia, you know, as a working class human being, and always relating to working class, although playing capitalist game. But I was not aware of that at the time. We were doing it full scale. I was just making my, you know, doing my job or whatever it was called. But there was always this. I was an atheist as a teenager, you know, and then with the advent of acid and that, there was all this glorious vision and all that shit. And so I tended to go back because we all somehow need a father figure, you know, even Chairman Mao's that. And the father figures were all laid on the line with the Buddhists and the Christianity, and having been brought up in that, it was an easy switch to sort of Well, you know, there must be something to it. You know, this feeling of brotherly love, I translate it as a feeling of God. But having gone through this therapy and understood the wish for father and mother in life from us all, whether we had them or not, we never got what we wanted from them. And as soon as that was felt, physically felt, there was no question of a God. You know. It was just, I had to do it that way then, to really kill off what the drugs had done. And it was that, you know, and having felt my own pain, literally, I mean, in the therapy, you really feel every painful moment in your life, and it's excruciating. It's like being crucified. And you know that that's your pain and not a result of somebody in the sky, and then it's a result of your parents and your environment.
The whole social context.
Yeah, so it just all fell into place, you know. I mean, at one time, I always used to claim to be a Christian communist, you know, which is bullshit, really. But, you know, that was the position I took, because I could not disassociate myself with this God shit, you know. But this therapy, I don't know, there was a moment when experiencing some kind of pain, realizing that there was nothing to do with anybody else but me. I'm associating with parents, but it was me that was feeling it. Nobody had anything to do with it. It was my own self. And that just finished it. It was the end then. You know. I mean, it wasn't any great revelation. It was just like, oh, fucking hell, what have I been doing? And then the thing was what to do about it. You know, having always, especially since Yoko came, wanted to do something about peace or people, you know. Yeah. And there the point now was what to do now. You know, where do I stand? What education have I got to catch up with? Or shall I rely on my own common sense, which usually now the myths have gone. It leads you to the one conclusion, you know, we're all oppressed and that's it, you know, and something has to be done about it. But then... And
you actually were still thinking about it when writing even songs like Revolution that seemed to be knocking politics. In a way, you were thinking about a political problem.
Oh, sure. I mean, Revolution, there's two versions of the song Revolution. Of course, the Underground Left picked up on the one that says Count Me Out. But there's two versions. One, but the original version, which was ended up on the LP, said, when you talk about destruction, you can count me out in and out. I put both in because I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
On the one I released as a single, and apart from getting a bit fed up of doing it, I'd been trying to make it in a more sort of commercial style, and the single is much faster than the album version. I missed out Count Me In, you know, because I'm a coward, I don't want to be killed and all the rest of it, you know. Yeah. So with that thing in mind, and the story was, I didn't really know that much about the Maoists, but I just knew that they seemed to be so few and like painting themselves green and standing in front of the police and getting picked off. I just thought it was unsubtle. You know, I thought, I don't think the original communist revolutionaries went around shouting about it. You know, they kept quiet and
they didn't ask to be picked up.
Right, they coordinated themselves a bit better. Yeah. And that was I was really asking a question, you know.
Also, they got dug into what the people really wanted, which is what Mao did.
Yes.
He didn't just wave a red book. I mean, that wasn't.
But the only problem with Mao, it seems to me, so the Revolution the song was that really. I was posing a question and saying in and out. There was 3 revolutions, 2 songs and 1 abstract, like I don't know what you call it, music concrete or something like loops and that, which was a picture of the revolution.
That was the last track, wasn't it, on the Beatles double album?
Just before Ringo does a Hollywood bit, yeah. So that was a picture I sort of painted in sound of the revolution, which was complete murder and killing and people screaming and kids crying and all that, which is what I really thought it would be. But I think it was a mistake.
Most of the murder and killing these days is done by the counter-revolutionists.
Sure, yeah.
the governments who have all the...
But I just made a picture of like Northern Ireland, saying it's just shoot bank, kids crying and howling and arbitrary voices coming in saying things.
Could I just ask you, I mean, rising out of that, I mean, first, how this ties into analysis. I get the idea that, I mean, most analysis is reconciling people to their pain and to the world.
Yeah, but most of
this guy doesn't seem to be doing that. He's doing the opposite. He's bringing that...
Yeah, his thing is to feel that pain, not come to terms with it. I mean, we come to terms with it ourselves to survive to the age we are. Yeah. If we... All the pain, the repression pains which are caused at childhood are literally repressed in you. They come out in arthritis or asthma or whatever. I mean, people with asthma and other thyroid things are being cured in his place by allowing themselves. They're literally trying to kill themselves to get parents' love in a way. You know, look, mummy, now will you love me? I'm a cripple, you know. And we put it somewhere else. I put it in sort of into my eyes, literally, you know, which I experienced sort of moments of not wanting to see when I was a child, not wanting to see the ugliness, not wanting to see not being wanted went into my eyes and into my mind. And he doesn't just put you back to talk about. You do most of the work yourself, actually. Once they've sort of started on you, it just happens yourself. It's machinery. Once the machinery for feeling everything that goes on to you is opened, you can't stop it. But after 30 years of repressing feeling and put it in my backbone or in my neck and things like that.
But what's left after his...
You're left with yourself, you know, and still with the ability to feel daily, almost daily, we primal, which is cry about repressed feeling. Every morning most of us wake up in fear. You know, that's your weakest moment when you first wake up. And that's usually when your heart's pounding, and for no reason you can think of. Now that's just the basic fear inside all of us. Well, this allows you to, in a way, you put, instead of having your heart going like clappers or some strain in your back or something, and just sort of either taking a pill or saying, well, I'll get over it, I'll have a bath and that, you let your mind go to that pain, and after you've been through the therapy, the pain itself will regurgitate the memory that originally caused you to suppress it into your heart, you know. So you sort of lie there, and your mind goes to this pain, and it goes like, oh, 1943, this happened, you know. It comes out literally like that, and you cry about it, you know. You feel that feeling and cry.
Even after the analysis, you can't cancel out what's happened.
No. I mean, it's like all the pain was always channeled into whatever, sex or masturbation or dreaming or God or whatever it is. But once the channels are open for the pain, when you feel pain, the pain actually goes through the right channels, and you express it the right way, which is crying like children do. But for men, we're told not to cry from an early age, so we have to repress ourselves all that time. And there's no harm in crying, you know. You cry, you feel good, like you did when you were a kid. Good, that's all, you know. You feel... It's like after acid. The therapy was literally like a 6-month, very slow acid trip.
Yeah.
The difference between acid and the therapy is acid unleashes all these feelings. There's so many of them, and they're not channeled in the right direction.
Because you don't know what's happening.
Well, you do after you get used to it, you know, you can work it out. But after all those years of channeling it the wrong way, so when people have acid, they hallucinate, because it's not the pain and the awareness of feeling that you get on those drugs is so much that you cannot take it, you know. It's too much at once, and you hallucinate, or whatever you do, you know, trip off away from reality. And the therapy was like a very slow acid trip, you know, which happens naturally within the body. It's hard to talk about, you know, because we talk about crying and pain and that. Yeah. It sounds sort of arbitrary, but the pain to me now has a different meaning, the word, because of having physically felt all these extraordinary repressions that I had. And feeling means a different word to me, because after the therapy, and after specifically large, big primals, it was like taking gloves off, that you could feel your own skin for the first time. It was like I'd been wearing gloves all my life, and suddenly there was a literal feeling in the hands, you know. It's incredible. I don't like talking about it because it sounds so abstract, you know, and you can't really understand if the vocabulary is different between people who have done it and haven't done it, it's a bit of a drag to say that. But I can't, I say pain or whatever it's toothache or whatever. Just the simple pain of living. I mean, that's part of the dissolving of the God trip or father figure trip, always looking for some kind of heaven.
Yeah.
I mean, intellectually I knew that it was yin-yang or black and white continually, or dialectic materialism. It's the same thing, really. And once God's out the way, well, the main asset is to realize there's no good and bad. There's a bit of everything every day, and you just go through it.
You trace that pain to, you said first, the family.
Oh yeah, it's direct involvement with the family. I mean, the family is what shapes you.
I mean, I take it you don't mean sort of your family in particular.
No, every family.
Yoko's would be...
Yeah, you see, the extraordinary thing is my father and mother split and all that, and I never saw them. I never saw my father till I was at 20 or something like that. So mine's like an extreme case, But Yoko had her parents there, but she never had them. The lyrics of Mother, which says, "You had me and I never had you," applies to people with parents too. It's not to the,
Yeah, more subtly, perhaps.
Yeah, sure, because she went through the same pain.
Yeah.
All they're given...
More pain in a way, because they were sort
It's
of
harder to...
illusory people. It's like when you're hungry, instead of getting a cheeseburger, you get a film of a cheeseburger, and it doesn't do you any good,
And that's what most middle class get, even more.
But
because they're
the
so
Japanese
formalised.
have much more emphasis on...
There's more middle class people in his thing, because they can afford it, and they're the ones that are cracking up.
Mother is the big bit.
And the middle classes are really repressed, they're the most repressed people, they have all these formalities to go through with their parents, and actually touching is out, it's like intellectual love, or like she says, films of love, and she was in that school of pain.
I always wished my mother died, so I could at least get decent sympathy, But there she was, perfectly beautiful mother and all that. So everybody said, how lucky you are to have a mother like that. And, when it wasn't really true, I wasn't lucky to have a mother who was sort of...
None of them are,
Yeah. But, I mean, in a way, what the parents are doing is transmitting to the children the fact that their lives have been fucked up in their work.
Yeah, they can't give because they've never been given to. But the problem for most people, and extraordinarily enough for me, who'd had no real impression that my mother actually wanted me, because she wasn't there, or father, but still one of the hardest things is to realise that actually they didn't want you. Anyway, you're just the result of a fuck. Yeah. Not many of us are planned. And in fact, their own need is so great that they cannot possibly give to you. So the thing is to cut off, to allow yourself to feel your own want is a big problem. The thing we all seem to greatly fear is to show the want we have of love from other people or whatever it is, especially parents. And to sort of feel it and acknowledge in your mind, no, they didn't want me. That is a fact. I was not wanted. No wonder I feel shitty, because I couldn't explain it as a child. You just know that something's not right, something is not there. And that's the big trauma, to experience that. And a lot, especially the middle class people who have nice imagey parents, that are smiling and all dolled up and that, they're the ones that had the biggest struggle to say goodbye, mummy, goodbye, daddy. I never had you, and I must realise that I never had you and I never will. But the middle class people in the therapy were continually sort of going back to their parents just to see them. Maybe I can tell them about this experience I've had, and I understand them, but the parents could not associate with it.
On the record, I sort of thought that the Mum Is Dead track.
Yeah.
I sort of listened to it several times, and then I suddenly realised it was reminding me of something. I couldn't remember what it was. Yeah. And then it seemed like perhaps it was Three Blind Mice. Is that right?
Well, the tune was, because it was just a feeling, it was almost like a haiku poem. And
all of them said that radio.
Yeah. I actually got into haiku in Japan just recently. I just think it's fantastic.
It is, yeah.
God, it's beautiful. We bought some haiku originals there while we were there. Great stuff. But obviously, when you get rid of a whole section of illusion in your mind, you're left with a precision, Whereas the difference between haiku and Longfellow or something is immense, you know. I mean, Longfellow says, oh, beautiful yellow flowers standing quietly in the shadowy electric light, when the haiku would just say, yellow flowers in a white bowl on a wooden table, and that gives you the whole picture.
Yeah.
And obviously, those
It
people...
looks much more simple, but like your music is now, in fact, it's not so simple. It has to be listened to many, many times to get into it.
Because people's perception of reality, they're not used to it. They don't know what it is. So when a simple haiku or a simple statement is made, they're not used to it. They're used to devious intellectual ways of feeling things. I don't know what people who aren't intellectuals do to arrive at the point, but they probably go through some mystic Walt Disney scene, you know, but to arrive at the point that this is a biscuit and nothing else, you know. But if you say something, this is a biscuit...
Religion is a very popular sort of need for the reason that you say it's...
Well, but
it's more than a convention in that people need religion. It covers up the pain.
Yes, religion is a legalized madness. That's what Janov says. You know, it's
very good though.
Because
very
you have to allow it. If the government stopped them having some, I mean, like all those stories, maybe 1984 when they replaced God with a bomb or a rocket or something. I mean, they've even discussed it in America. What would we do if we had no war or no rocket to the moon? We've got to give them something to replace the religion thing. I think it was him or George, I'm not sure, who said opium is the religion of the people now, instead of religion is the opium of the people. That's what's happening.
Actually, Marx in that essay, that early one, he also said religion is the heart of a heartless world, and there's a fantastic passage that's very like the, God is
a concept.
Yeah. But I'm sure you haven't...
No. When he interviewed me, he said, you realise that lots of philosophers, or whoever, I don't know what they were, had talked about God being a concept about which we measure our things. That was my own revelation. It was based on something Maharishi once said, which was time was a concept by which we measure... Oh, what was it?
Which we measure
eternity, which is pretty cool. But I use that basis to put what I thought about God. A lot of kids wrote to me by Rolling Stone saying, well, what about joy? God is a concept by which we measure our joy, John, and all that. So they obviously...
mad.
Well, apart from being mad, they just... there's a point in it, but I wasn't saying that. I mean, joy, when you've got joy, you don't think about God much. It's only when you're in pain that you start thinking.
Look, the people who always have the most intense religious experience are those who are very oppressed and very miserable.
Very mental, you know.
You know, blacks in the States, Indians in Mexico, these are the people who really are possessed by religion.
Yes, sure. Yeah, no, it's no sort of accident that so many fag priests, because like a fag has done, if any of you fags, excuse me, it doesn't matter, if fags have completely reversed their role to please Mummy and Danny. They've gone so far that they've reversed themselves and saying, now do you love me? I've not been what I was, I am now something else for you. Would this suit you? And Mummy says, yes, good boy, come home and bathe.
Or it's a revolt, perhaps, against their parents' classification.
I don't think so, because the fags are usually very close to the mother.
They are.
I mean, there's no getting away from it.
That's true, yeah.
And I thought it was another interesting thing. Some woman recently wrote a book about all the prime ministers here and their life. I didn't read the book, but I read sort of praises of it. That their lives are all the main prime ministers we ever had, including Heath, apart from being short people, which that myth seems to be true. They repress themselves so much that they don't grow for Mummy and Daddy's sake. Look, I'm still a little boy, and I'll be good for you. But most of the prime ministers of Britain have been repressed kids with strange childhoods or loss of parents and things like that. Because the kind of people that,
look,
like
I've got
myself...
to be careful of that one, because, you can argue that about lots of people. Most very creative artists have.
Sure, I agree.
I said
it doesn't discredit them, but art is only a way of expressing pain.
Right.
I mean, the reason she does such far out stuff is because her pain is expressed in a sort of far out way. It's a far out kind of pain, and the only reason for sure why I'm a star is because of my repression. Nothing else would have driven me through all that. I mean, why would I do it if I was sort of normal, unhappy? The only reason you go for that goal is because you want to say, now will you love me? Look, I'm Prime Minister, you know, or I'm head of the department. I mean, even, I guess...
There are two things here, which is, that is the motive force. But how people come to terms with it, I mean, themselves, can be in two different ways. I mean, I remember once, you know, when I met Wilson, actually, I felt, what a shriveled up guy he is, you know. To be successful, he's completely repressed any human emotions he might have felt. And I got the impression in your interview that when you were a successful Beatle, when you were playing the game, as it were, you, even though you were so successful, I mean, I suppose the most fantastic dream of success of the mid-20th century, you still were oppressed by it.
Oh, Jesus Christ, it was complete oppression. I mean, we had to go through humiliation upon humiliation with the middle classes and showbiz and, like I said, Lord Mayors here, there. Yeah. I mean, it was complete humiliation for me because I could never keep my mouth shut. And I'd always be drunk or pilled or something to counteract this pressure. And it was hell, you know.
He was actually deprived, you know, more than anything, you know. It's not like he was just learning of success and being happy.
It was a very miserable period, you know. I mean, apart from the first flush of making it, you know, your first #1 record, thrilling, and first to break into America, thrilling, that was some sort of objective that you could sort of, well, I want to be as big as Elvis or something like that. And it just, the moving forward was the great thing. But actually attaining it was a big letdown.
At one point, it seemed like really everybody was using you because.
Well, sure. I mean,
Wilson wanted to get votes. Consulting with you.
And the only reason we wouldn't pose with Heath was because he'd insulted me in the House about my book in his own right by saying if this boy had been educated, he would have been a good writer. But that's what he said about me. So we wouldn't go anywhere near them. And anyway, we were socialists at heart, and we presumed that Harold would be better than Heath. You know, it was a big letdown for all of us, but it turned out to be better than this. Like Richard Neville said, you know, there's an inch difference between them, and that's an inch in which we live. I think it's true in a way.
Well, I mean, the Labour government did, in fact, almost, one can say, equally nasty things in its time. After all, it kept the blacks out, Kenyan nations who had British passports.
Oh, sure, that was bad, but now, it's nothing as bad as now.
Yeah, but...
I mean, the underground of the blacks weren't sort of... They've always been harried, but... Michael said that as soon as they came in, it was just...
You don't know. I mean, Wilson could have changed on that. He changed on a lot of things. And this business about living in that inch, what Richard said is quite true, but still, we shouldn't be wanting to live in that inch, because so long as we're in that inch, we're impotent, and we're cut off from the great mass of people.
But I still...
Heath may be doing us a good turn by forcing us out.
Yeah, I've thought of that too, you know. He's putting us in a corner, so we have to do something. Yeah.
We've got to find out what other people are, what you know, is oppressing them too. You know,
that's why meeting is very important. You know, meeting of each other and finding out.
Well, the first thing we did when we got back was contact you and Richard Neville and Michael, which we had spent quite a time with anyway. Because in your individual ways, you represent the movement in different spheres. You know, all the different aspects of it. And we got messages abroad that the complete repression was going on, you know, to all of it. Well, you even said in Red Mole, apart from Richard Neville's anarchist tendencies, that, you know, all power to him, because you'll be next, sure as hell you will. You know?
Yeah.
And actually that's begun to happen now. A lot of the political groups have been raided in the last 3 weeks in the wake of that explosion business.
The police, now when in many parts of the country are receiving information that even in towns which seem politically dead, that when Red Mole sellers go out onto the streets, the police just hustle them off. They just refuse in many places to allow the comrades now to sell the paper on the street.
Can't you do it direct through universities?
We are doing it a lot through universities, you see, but what worries them now is that more and more red molds are being sold to young workers.
Yeah.
Young workers who aren't
That's good.
bugged about all the old...
Because the Daily Worker, or a Red Star now, is it?
Morning Star.
Morning Star.
Not Red Star.
Yeah.
Morning Star.
Well, I get it every day to see if there's any hope, but
Yeah.
it just doesn't seem to be. It seems to be in the 19th century.
It is.
So if you can get at the young workers,
Yeah.
because obviously when you're 18 and 19, 20, that's when you're most ripe for. That's when you're most idealistic, and have less fear. Those are the people that... Well, what I was trying to do in the Rolling Stone article was influence all the people I can influence who are still under a dream.
Yeah.
To just put a big question mark in their mind. Well, if great Guru John says there's no God and it's all pain, maybe the acid dream is over. I'm trying to tell them that is over.
But also there was a very good bit in the interview where he asked you, well, what's really changed in England? It seemed like a great cultural revolution, was it?
Bullshit, yeah.
Yeah. Because, and you were saying about how the same people were in power.
Sure.
Longer hair, some of them, but
yeah.
Even that actually is disappearing. They're
Well, we cut our hair specifically for that reason too, to stop that identification parade going on, that anybody with long hair was a socialist or a radical or anything.
Absolutely.
So to confuse those image followers, keep changing,
And also, I notice you're wearing overalls these days.
Well, there's many reasons for that. Is that during the therapy, we weren't supposed to repress anything, and we all became children, literally, and we were all just eating ice cream in America. All the people on the therapy are just eating like children, because when you relive in your childhood, you become that. And we put on 20 or 30 pounds just during that period. So it came down, I couldn't wear any of my clothes, and I'm not going to buy a new set of clothes for this figure, so I got these, It was as simple as that, And also the functional, before I would wear jeans, but now I can't fit into any of them, so this is the next best thing. And it's bloody functional, And I don't normally go anywhere where you need a tie anyway, so I'd fed up with being a peacock. I decided I was an artist, not a model.
Yeah.
So that was the changing point.
One of the things that it is true that we can, in the Red Mold, we can get into contact now with young workers, but still one shouldn't, and the barriers are still immense.
Yeah.
And it seems to me this is, you say that in the Working Class Hero song about, the fucking peasants. And there's a lot of that peasant-like feeling around. How do you see that? Do you think that as an artist, you can help to destroy, because it's really a culture of subordination, isn't it?
Yes.
Thinking that you're on the...
Yes.
You've always got to be dominated and led.
Yeah. Well, it's a cosy feeling for them, in a way, like being in prison, You don't have to think, You take your position and stick with it. And it's that, really, which is the problem.
Also the desire for father and all that.
Yeah, nice big company to look after you and all that,
Well, the Rolls-Royce crash seems to have somewhat disproved that.
Yeah, right. Well, the more of that happens, the better in a way.
Yeah.
For the workers, in the long run.
10,000 workers held shares in that company under a scheme that was touted as, workers and capitalists getting together.
Like the Japanese do.
Now, of course, they've lost not only their job, but all their life savings, so it really shows that particular...
Because Rolls-Royce is a very paternalistic firm, we really look after our workers, we give them a few shares and maybe the odd directorship.
Also, the unions were very tame then, it wasn't...
Well, they're more like the Japanese unions, which are just company-run unions.
Yeah.
I like you now.
Great. But I don't know about that problem, because it seems to me that all the revolutions have either happened with a Fidel or a Marx and the Khrushchevs or whatever it was in the early days, who were literally intellectuals, whether they were workers or not. And they got a good pocket of people, and I don't know how they got through to the workers, except for the workers in a more repressed state than they seemingly are here. It's to get through to people that... See, the Americans have woken up in a way to the fact that, 2 cars and 2 tellies does not answer it. But here, they haven't had it long. And they're still...
But John, it seems to me where you in a way the revolutionary artist comes in, because the workers here are repressed not by guns, but by ideas and culture.
They're doped,
and the whole ideas of the ruling class.
Yeah.
You know.
It's television and the spectacle.
Yes, that's the
on one level, on the other level.
And you're part of that, or
Yeah,
you were, and then you freaked out of it. But I mean, you're in a sense, you're still a bit of it.
Sure, because I'm not sure what to do or where my place is now. I've just sort of found myself in a... I woke up, so I have to sniff around and see what my place is, and what I can do. Which is why we're all talking.
Yeah.
One of the problems I feel is, I think, maybe it was in the interview or somewhere else, I read about your influences, and obviously most of them came from the States, didn't they? There isn't a native tradition here which is really revolutionary in a cultural sense. Or is there perhaps Newcastle mining songs or something? I think you mentioned them, did you, or not?
Yeah, the thing was that rock and roll itself was the basic revolution to people of my age and situation then. That was the... I think the reason was that because we're so unfeeling and repressed, that something sort of as basic and as loud as rock and roll... That's all right. Something that I think the reason why rock and roll got through to kids was because it had to be loud to get through their non-feeling and the repression that they've been under.
And also the way
it had
they
to be
reacted
simple.
to it.
Yeah. So I've forgotten what the question was.
About whether there was...
There's something in England
I see.
developed it.
But
because the folk
we all were very conscious of being imitation Americans in the early days, but we delved into the music and found out that it was half white country and western and half black rock and roll. That's Africa, and most of the country songs basically came from England. The original, all those train songs. Sure, they did Scotland and Ireland. All the basic folk song comes from Europe. So it was just a cultural exchange. I mean, they went to America and Americanized the songs, and they sang about working on the railroads, and the blacks sang about working in the cotton fields. But all the basic songs, like lots of Dylan's basic songs, are Scottish, Irish or English folk songs. So that made us feel better, We delve into that side of it. But of course the more interesting songs to me were the black ones, because they were simpler. And they just sort of said, shake your arse and, shake your prick about, which was quite an innovation, really,
Look, the good thing
loosen
about
your
that
limbs up.
is it's getting you to do something, whereas some of the folk song tradition is about getting defeated.
Well, the folk songs
it's about losing.
are completely middle class, you see. As kids, we were opposed to folk songs because it was all middle class. It was the same as jazz. It was college students with big scarves and a pint of beer and singing folk songs in what we call la-di-da voices. I work in the mine in Newcastle, and all that shit, And there was very few real folk singers, I liked Dominic Bean a bit, and there was quite a folk song tradition in England, in Liverpool, and country and western. The country and western was complete cowboy hook. But the folk songs, most of them were middle class kids just singing in very fruity voices. And I heard a few. They sometimes were very old records of real workers singing the songs. And even now you occasionally see on TV some Irish still singing them because they're in a different state still. The actual people that work every day and go to the pub singing the songs. And the power of them like that is fantastic. And I started getting a little more interested in that. But the barrier was my own sort of class prejudice, which was that folk songs had always been on the BBC with fruity voices and had nothing to do with folk music. They were just sort of classical reproductions of keeping alive some old tradition. It was a bit boring, like ballet or something. And a minority thing kept going for a minority group, and that today's folk song was rock and roll, even though it happened to emulate from America. That was not really important in the end. Because then we wrote our own, and that changed it.
Funnily enough, some of your songs, even when, the lyrics were quite, like almost nursery lyrics, like, I mean, Yellow Submarine, for example.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know, you probably do, that was used by workers on strike, and at the LSE we had a version of it, which was We Are All Living in a Red LSE.
Yes.
And workers had a version of it that went, We're all living on bread and margarine.
That's right. They heckled Harold Wilson outside a Labour Party conference singing, We're all living on bread and margarine for higher wages and things.
That's great. You know, I like that. I like that, and I enjoyed when the football crowds would, in the early days, sing things like Yellow Submarine and All Together Now, which is another one that we put out. It just said all together now, all together now, all together now, all together now, all the time. And I was pleased when Give Peace a Chance became a sort of anthem thing in those American things, because I'd written it with that in mind, really, hoping that instead of singing We Shall Overcome from 1800 or whatever it is, that they would sing something. I felt an obligation even then to write something that people would sing, actually, you know, in the pub or in a demonstration.
That was thinking very politically, actually, wasn't it?
Well, I've always been politically minded, you know. I mean, I've never not been political. I mean, religion tended to overshadow it during the acid days, which was probably 65, 66 or something. And that was almost a direct result of being in that repressed superstar position. And then religion was an outlet for that, you know. Well, there's something else to come. This isn't it, surely, you know. I mean, there's more to come. But I've always been political. In the two books I wrote, even though they're in sort of Joycean gobbledygook, there's plenty of. There's a play about a worker and a capitalist. There's many knocks at religion. I've been satirising religion and that from childhood in books. I used to always write magazines at school and hand them round, things like that. So I've always been conscious of that. I'm very conscious of class, you know. They used to say it was a chip on my shoulder, it still is, you know. Because I know what happened to me. I know what all the class repression that happened to me. I mean, it was a fucking fact. But of course, in the Hurricane Beatle world, it got a bit left out, you know, because it was really a struggle.
Classless ideology, wasn't there? That somehow you disproved the class system. It was felt, I think. You know?
Yeah, there was a feeling that the workers had broken through, but it was. I realised in retrospect, it was just like they allowed blacks to be runners and footballers or boxers. That's the choice. But now you can be a pop star. You know, I mean, that's the outlet they've given you to be something, which is what I really say on that album. But
none of the American groups have dared tackle class yet, even when they shout about revolution.
Because they're all middle class, and they don't want to show that they're middle class and they're bourgeois as shit. You know, they are middle class, and
they're scared of the workers, actually.
Sure they are, because the workers are sort of seem mainly right wing in America, clinging on to their goods. But as soon as they realise what their class has done, then it's up to them to repatriate the people. But the thing about, even during the Beatle heyday, I think it was me mainly and George who insisted. We'd been to America a few times, and Epstein had always tried to waffle us about talking about Vietnam, you know. So there came a time when George and I said, listen, when they ask us next time, we're going to say we don't like it, you know, we think you should get out. And that's what we did, which was pretty radical for the Fab Four at the time.
Yeah. It had a phenomenal effect also in the States.
Yeah.
You know, it brought up all these right-wing radio commentators who'd been drooling about the Beatles to show their true colours.
It was the first opportunity which I personally took to wave the flag a bit. I'd always felt that repression. But as I say, it was so involved and the going was so pressurised that there was hardly any means of expressing yourself at that rate. We were just working continually, touring continually, and always kept in this cocoon. And it's pretty hard when you are Caesar and everybody's saying how wonderful you are and giving you all the goodies and all the girls or whatever it is, to break out of that. It's hard to say, well, I don't want to be king, you know, I want to be real. And the second big sort of political thing was when I said the Beatles are bigger than Jesus. And that really broke the scene. I mean, I nearly got shot in America. And that was another big trauma for all the kids following us.
What impact did Vietnam have for you? When did you first start thinking about Vietnam? And did it play any part in sort of accelerating your radicalization?
I don't really remember, I just remember that we'd had this sort of unspoken policy of not getting involved by answering any questions, and that probably I always read most of the newspapers, whether it was shit or not, and read the sort of political bits. And I think the continual awareness of it as it grew in me made me feel ashamed that I wasn't saying anything. That's when it sort of burst out at that period, because I could no longer, I couldn't play that game anymore. It just was too much for me, the pressure of shutting up. I had to say something. And it was just a build-up, I think. I can't remember first being aware of that war,
Yeah.
It was obvious that I would become more aware of it going to America, where it was happening, and being approached by sort of underground or whatever it was, although mainly it was, capitalist press that saw us. There was always somebody there, grinding in somewhere or other. So I can't remember the exact time.
Could I just return to one point on,
Yeah.
you were talking about folk and black music.
Yeah.
It seems to me that one of the big problems about folk music is it's sort of depressing, it's sort of losing, whereas black music is about fighting. And I think even in Dylan's best songs, you somehow feel, they've had it. Maybe it's because it comes out of struggles that were a long time ago that didn't.
Yeah, but most of the sort of urban blues and things like that were mainly about sex and fighting each other on the street over a woman or something.
Which isn't very...
No, and the field songs were mainly just expressing the pain they were in, That's all they could do. Because the English or American wasn't. That's what I like about it, because they couldn't express themselves intellectually, so they had to say in very few words what was happening to them, and it was really self-expression until it probably, because there were many different pockets of blues. Originally it was in the fields, and then as they moved to the Chicago and places like that, it developed into city blues and all that thing. So it was still an expression of their own individual pain, or the black man in general, but there was never any solution given. There was never any it was always God will save us. You see, they're labouring under that problem about God always pervaded their songs, And so I don't think there was any answers given, or indications of anything really. I don't know.
To what extent do you think answers can be given?
I don't think answers can be. The first thing one can do is state your own position, which is what they did with their songs. And then I think the second thing is to find out who else thinks like you. And then there's a group, which is what's evolving there now. And even only just recently have they started singing about the war of the blacks, or any kind of revolution. Apart from people like Nina Simone. But most of them, like Dick Gregory said, most of the blacks are still doing the boogaloo, which is... But there is a big change now, with that Edwin Starr and that, making more records and stating black positions and black is beautiful and all the rest of it is a big change. It's only happened in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
So they've come to that point now where they're expressing themselves completely, solidly, and expressing opinions on their position rather than just saying, I'm in pain, man. They're saying, we're in pain, man, and this is why. And